Where I have a problem is that there is, I believe that civilizations at some stage lose the ability to be original. And I think that is one of the symptoms of the Indian civilization. There is nothing original from India or China or the Japanese civilization, and the Anglo-Saxon civilization has been very, very original in the last 400 or 500 years. One has to admit their inventiveness is extraordinary, which doesn't exist here. And what all civilizations do is they take what is somebody else's and adapt it and try and politicize it and try to make it their own. This is what has classically happened to secularism in India. So there's been, there is this Indian secularism, but then there's all fudging about what exactly is Indian secularism. I challenged three the leading figures from India: Soli Sorabji, Ram Jethmalani, and Krishna Iyer. They were in a forum in Harvard, and I said, what does Indian secularism mean? This tolerance, equal treatment of religion. That is not the assumption made in the Indian Constitution. The assumption on which the Indian Constitution is made is the Oxford Dictionary definition of secularism, which is the negation of religion from the state. It is not equal respect of religion. This is a political statement that you have made afterwards. And none of them could respond to that. They agreed. In the end, they started calling me an extremist. I didn't understand how that logic went in there. But, I can see it. But this is so. What my thing is that you're asking for clarity when it simply cannot occur. And one of the differences between Indian and perhaps Eastern and Western civilization is the core of Eastern civilization is the grey area, the lack of clarity. And the core of Western civilization is to look for clarity, try and define, looking for clarity. And then we have a lot of fudge situation on almost everything in India. And the result of that is greater and greater violence. Now where I have a problem is that secularism does have a history in the Indian tradition. I believe it has a history in the Indian tradition. Perhaps I may be wrong, but I think it's in the context of the Samkhya school. What is new is the claim to public dominance, to dominate the public sphere and exclude everybody else and call them religion. I take exception, I take offense when we are called a religious community. And in fact, the struggles of the Sikhs, which has been, and I have to say, Indian scholarship has been absolutely poor in understanding the struggle in Punjab. You say in your own book how the West has understood Islamic, the conflict that is occurring between Islam and the West in the last 10 years, and understanding there's so many different Muslim interpretations and Islamic interpretation. Tony Blair, a politician, a prime minister, took the trouble to read the Quran. And our current Prime Minister has taken the trouble to read the Quran. I can assure you that no Indian scholar even took the trouble to understand the interpretation of the Granth Sahib in English, let alone read the Granth Sahib to understand what was bothering the Sikhs with India. It's not a secessionist struggle, it's not a struggle, it was the struggle against secularization, precisely what the prescription that you're offering. And that is the struggle at the heart of the Sikhs against India. It has been there since 1947. It's not something that occurred in 1984. And I also have been disappointed I come to academic conferences in India. I can hear about an amazing sort of description of the most obscure Western philosopher in India. But I don't hear anything about analytic tools used by Indian philosophers. I can hear about Locke, but did you know that preceding Locke, Guru Nanak had already resolved all these things about inequality that you call the products of modernity. There is within Sikhs a tradition of democracy, which is even far more severe, it is more further than the Western concept of democracy. This is why the Sikhs were profound, because it's the right of the individual is the sovereign, not the state, not a community, not a king. So, this is where I think I agree with Jacob on one context, that there is an importation of a system and then trying to make it Indian and trying to diffuse it and trying to dislocate it from its origin and make it internationalized and say, look, this has further, it has a lot of relevance to the whole mankind. But I don't see that relevance in this country. And the fact is, there were 2 riots in 2001, 3 riots in 2001 in UK. UK government moved very fast. Right or wrong, it accepted that Asians were essentially religious communities, and it started to incorporate them into the nation building. in the Home Office statistics, in the Home Office site of India, there are between 600 and 1400 rights every year. Every year. And there doesn't seem to be any concern that something is going wrong.
I'm going to take a minute and a half. The Sikh community does not occupy the entirety of the political space in Punjab. My family also belongs to Punjab, but we are not Sikhs. My daughter-in-law is Sikh, but we are not Sikhs. Right? Now, if Sikhs believe that political power should be controlled by Sikhs...
No, that's not what I said.
No, you said there is no distinction between politics, sacred and secular.
I think to do better
I quite
scholarship than
understand. I've
this.
done study of the Punjab. How are two communities going to live together?
I think they existed very well before British colonialism. And that,
Till
I think you need to study Ranjit Singh's role.
I also read my Harjot Oberoi.
You need to study
and I know
Ranjit Singh's
exactly
role.
what happened in the last part of the 19th century when communities started mobilizing for very many reasons. Secularism as a principle of state policy is designed to regulate relationships between communities and between the state and community. It's not supposed to be identified with secularization at all. And nowhere in the Indian constitution is it said that secularism means separation of... Secularism was added into the preamble only in 1977.
76 by
Indira Gandhi.
Anyway, just that I think we have to historicize.
Oh, you are
See the
contagious disease.
See, I don't think there's any logic of civilizations developing and declining and borrowing from others or developing very new things. I think what has happened in India in the last 150 years or the last centuries is what the phenomenon of colonialism is. I mean, Indian intellectuals have basically accepted a particular description of the Western colonial experience of India as a true description. And they've accepted that since that is a true description, we also need to borrow political theories from Europe and have to implement them. Of course, this vagueness of use of secular and the shifting between all these so-called meanings has to do with the fact that there's no theoretical background. And that's the point I've been trying to make, and what you've seen here. First, secular means non-alignment with religion, suddenly it means equal respect, and you can shift back and forth, because it doesn't really mean anything today. That was the point. There's no conceptual framework to make sense of it. And that is not related to the East not focusing on conceptual clarity. I think Asian traditions have focused on conceptual clarity, have been obsessed with finding out what the self is, for instance, and have used conceptual clarity there as a means to find out. Now, Sophia, very briefly, I think what you say is interesting. This notion of rights in some ways seems to stimulate conflict in society. But I don't know the mechanism behind it. It's very clear that in 1920s, 1930s, suddenly Hindus claim they have a Hindu right to having processions everywhere, and Muslims claim they have a Muslim right to cow slaughter, and the British don't know what to do. So I think rights...
You mean the Hindu religious right did it? All Hindus didn't do it. Stop making these sweeping statements about Indian history.
No, I didn't say all Hindus, I said
Hindus.
Hindus.
Did it, Muslims
You
did
can
it.
add some Hindus if you want.
What some Hindus, the political organization of the religious rights did it. Stop tarring us with your own assumptions about fundamentalism.
I'm not tarring you in any way.
Using your own interpretation of Indian history upon a plural, contested history. You're not willing to accept the narrowness of your own argument. Everything else is dismissed. Lack of clarity, no political theory. If you're not even receptive to alternative political theory, the whole purpose of this debate has been aborted.
Madam, would the Congress be included in... would the Congress be included in cow slaughter because there were Congressites who were part of the anti-cow slaughter movement? Was the Congress also a right-wing organization?
Actually, I wanted to say that apart from the welcome interruption of the audience, I was basically left speechless and I wanted to stop there, but I want to add something now to what Lina said. She has no clue. She claims that the goal of the dialogue has been aborted. She has no clue what the goal was. She has no clue what the dialogue is. And neither of the two, on the left side of me, stuck to the rules of the dialogue, which is printed big enough even for Nina to read. That's where I am.